then I'll share a video that my colleague Emily prepared, which I hope you'll be able to hear. So it's really great. But anyway, we're really excited. We're really excited to partner with UW-Stout for this program. We've been running programming in Cuba for quite a long time. I've personally been there, gosh, 5 times now. I can't remember. It's actually the last place I traveled before COVID hit. I was there in March for a day. Actually, I was actually in Cuba for only 4 hours, but I did make it down there and back. I was supposed to be with the program, but anyway, long story. But I was there. It's one of my absolute favorite places to be, and it's one of the coolest places that I think to study a program like this. So talking about cultural competence and heritage in Cuba is absolutely incredible. There's so many different cultures in Cuba that come together. So it's a really cool place to learn about the way intercultural learning takes place and the different cultures that come together and kind of just that blend and whatnot that's there. So Cuba has this strong own personal identity, but it also people can retain their identities that they've had as well. So it's just a really unique place. The program itself is going to take place in May, hopefully, of next year. So it's a really exciting time to be there. The weather is great. It's not yet super crazy hot, although it's definitely going to be a little bit warm because it is a nice tropical location. But just kind of some highlights about the program. The way things work in Cuba, everything is together. So it's very structured. We make sure that that's there. That's a requirement that we have of the law that we have, so the US law that is an educational focused trip. So there's not a ton of free time. There's as much as we can built in, and you will have free time, but it is a very structured program. So we keep you really busy. So you're going to make sure you get the most out of your experience that's there. There's a lot of different activities that are built into the program. So the academic portion is going to be taking place a lot prior to the program. And then while you're there, there'll be different lectures from different visitors and local specialists and whatnot. And then we incorporate cultural activities to kind of enhance that learning experience that you've had. So, for example, we talk about Cuban national identity, and then we visit the Revolution Square and the memorial of Jose Marti, who's one of the most famous Cuban fathers of all time. He's literally the father of so much in Cuba. You'll see his face everywhere, which is pretty cool. Then, there's time for independent reflection and study and whatnot. Things like cooking classes and visiting to different locations that are really important to cultural places in Cuba. So lots and lots of really fun and cool, exciting things to do. There's also a couple of different trips that we take. So there's little, day trips and things outside of the city of Havana. So it's a really great way to learn a little bit more about Cuba as well. So you do get some things in and around the local area as well. While you're there, you're going to be living in what we call a casa particular, or it's kind of like a residence hall, but it's in a private home. So you'll be living with a Cuban family in a large group, and then there's other Cuban people that are there that help with preparing your food and helping to do the cleaning and the caring for everything that's there, and just basically serving as kind of like your host family while you're there, but you're with the larger group. So all of the students will be housed together in a particular casa, and then it's in a really cool neighborhood in Cuba called Velado, which is really right by the university. So while you're not really going to be at the University of Havana, you will be very close to where that is. So it's a really cool part of the city that's very vibrant. There's a lot of things to do. So in the evening time, when you have free time, we'll show you around. So you can see where the different cafes are and the jazz clubs and everything like that. So it's really cool way to learn a lot about the local community as well. I do want to show a quick video that my colleague Emily, she's our resident director in Cuba, she prepared this video. So I want to make sure that you can see this. I hope you can see this video here. So I'm going to see if this will come through, but it's just a couple minutes long, but it gives you an idea of what to expect and kind of some pictures and whatnot. And also you get to see Emily, so that's kind of fun. So hopefully this will come through sound-wise.
Hi UW-Stout, I'm Emily, I'm API's Resident Director in Cuba, and I can't wait to have you guys here in Havana next year. I might be a little bit biased, but I think that Havana is the best location for you guys to come and to study abroad. It's only 90 miles from the United States, but it couldn't be more culturally different. There is so much life, there's so much happening here, and I can't wait for you guys, specifically because you're doing a heritage program, to come here and to just like take it all in. In Havana, you can really see and feel the connection to Africa in everyday life. I mean, from the way people dance, to the music, to the way they dress, to the religions they practice, there is so much obvious connection to Africa and to Western Africa specifically. I think Cuba's going to give you guys this amazing comparison point between your home culture in the United States and the way that here in Cuba, people really celebrate and really honor the African roots of their culture. I think that there's so much for you guys to dive into here, and I just can't wait to be a part of that with you.
Cool. So I just wanted to share that I thought that was a great kind of introduction to the program and to kind of Cuba, and again to see Emily, which is always good. She's wonderful. She's been a resident director there for quite some time, and she's wonderful. So, but like she said, it's just a great place to study the mixture of cultures, and specifically the African identity within Cuba. There's a lot of things that were in that video that were specifically Cuban, if you will. So you saw the rolling of the cigar. Cigar is a huge component of Cuban culture, and just the importance of what tobacco is to the island. Also, you saw the salsa, so dancing, of course, the Cuban music and the dancing in that culture as well. But there's so much more. So those are some kind of the more common things that people think about Cuba, but there's so much in there. And then one of my favorite parts about being in Cuba is that it's such a great opportunity for us as Americans to learn so much about the relationship that we have with the country. If you know the history, there's a lot of history, a very long history between the U.S. and Cuba. But what's interesting to me is, and what I love so much about being there, is that you really get to meet the real people in Cuba and see the true side of history and kind of a more real version of what it is. So you get to see on the different level. So that's one of my absolute favorite things about being able to be in Cuba, and one of the best things about being able to travel there. So it's an amazing place. I cannot wait to be on this program. I'm hoping that I get to go with you as well. So like I said, I've been there many times, and it's absolutely one of my favorite places in the world. So I'm missing it a lot. So this video makes me very kind of homesick for Cuba. So I can't wait to be back and to see the friends that I've made, that I get to stay with, and the friends that I made in this amazing location. So that's kind of a general little overview and kind of some things to think about, but I'm happy to answer any questions or, talk more about anything specific. So please let me know if there's anything I can address. Okay, so question regarding changes with COVID. So that's a great question. So, so as of right now, the way that our programming in Cuba works in particular is that it's already a private group, if you will. So it's kind of like you'll be a cohort within yourselves. So the families that you're staying in, there's extra precautions like different cleaning things that are taking place, sanitizing, of course, making sure that everything is as safe as possible, and all the different activities that we're doing, we will require different, masks and face coverings to be worn. So Cuba in particular was really good about managing the COVID when it first happened. So when I was there in March, actually, before it really locked down, even then everybody was required to wear face masks and everything, and they had a pretty good response right away. But we're always making sure that we're adhering to any local laws and regulations, and we will continue to make sure that we have availability for quarantining if that is something that becomes necessary. We'll making sure we're running activities that are able to be done safely and in regard to adhering to all the different regulations. So we can't do like large group activities that we would normally do that would be a large group of people per se. But we will make sure that we're always monitoring that and making sure that everything is safe and adhering to all the different local health regulations for sure. So if things don't change and things don't get better, then obviously we'll have to rethink the program in and of itself. But we're all very, very hopeful that we'll see some continued progress and changes, and everything will continue to get better. So that's a great question, though.
Jason, can you talk a little bit about some of the interactions with people there in Cuba? I know with the students will be staying kind of like a residencia, but like what other interactions might there be?
Yeah, so the interactions with Cuba, there's a lot of them. So first of all, like I mentioned, obviously living in the residencias or the casas, you'll have the opportunity to talk and meet your host family. Also, when I say host family, the different people that live and or work in the home. Also, where you're going to be, the Velado neighborhood is very residential. So it's the university section, but it's also like a very residential part of it. And a lot of the interaction that our students have had in the past with locals takes place, again, in the evening or doing different events. So it might be that they go and on one of their free lunches, they go to a restaurant and they meet some of the locals there, or they are, even just walking outside in the park. A lot of life in Cuba happens outside. That's another thing that's nice, especially with COVID, is that not a lot of things happen inside. So there's a lot of outdoor things happening. So there's lots of green parks and spaces there, walking along the Malecón, things like that. So and Cuban people are very friendly and very eager to speak with you. So it's really nice to be able to chat with people in that sense. There are other also activities that we will include. So for example, one of the activities is learning about a Caribbean and Afro-Cuban art and culture, including a dance performance. And then there's a Q&A with the dancers and then a dance class. So it's more of a structured time to meet with locals, but that's an opportunity for you to have conversations, ask questions, kind of get to know those people and, ask them anything that you'd like to ask about those things. So we try to structure some things in there as well, but a lot of it can be just, and we're happy to, point out places and take you different locations and meet people, but there's lots of different activities and ways to just kind of have just regular casual conversations or in a structured environment. So Cuban people love to talk, so it's great because they're always really eager to speak with you and have those kinds of conversations. So
great, thank you.
Yeah.
And how about the food? Can you talk about the food in Cuba? I heard it's really good.
Food in Cuba is amazing. I love it so much. And actually, I'm vegan, so it's changed a lot for me since the first couple times I went there. But the thing about Cuba that's interesting about the diet is that it does change a little bit based on what's available. So as there's a lot of things that Cuba can't get consistently, so it does vary. But they have a lot of agriculture there. So there's certain vegetables and things like that will vary from time to time. So it might be that sweet potatoes are in season, so they're really popular in the diet. Or it might be that another vegetable, like a root vegetable, my mind is blanking on what it's called right now, but there's this yummy yellow root vegetable that's really, really good. That's there all the time. But malanga, thank you, that's my word. Anyway, so it's always really good. There's always rice and beans. That's a staple of pretty much every Cuban meal. So rice, beans, salad. Typically that's cabbage, not necessarily lettuce, but typically a salad with cabbage. And then there is a lot of meat as well. So a lot of people think that pork is a really common part of a Cuban diet, but honestly, it's, not something that I've really seen in Cuba. It's usually either beef or chicken. So it does kind of vary a little bit. There's also a really big farm to table movement in Cuba. So there's a lot of organic agriculture. There's a restaurant called Mediterraneo that's very close to where the residences are. And it's a big farm to table restaurant, but it's like pizzas and things of that nature. There's different kinds of restaurants in Cuba also. So the majority of your meals are going to be included and cooked for you at your residencia, but there are some opportunities for you to go outside and dine on your own. And there's two different kinds of restaurants. There's the paladares, which are locally owned restaurants that are owned by local people, and that's where we always try to go. And then there's restaurants that are more government owned and operated, and we try to kind of steer away from those. But the paladares are typically a little bit more expensive, and they're not super expensive or anything like that by our standards, but they tend to be a little bit more expensive. But they're owned by locals, so there's a benefit to the Cuban people in that sense, and that's what we always try to push whenever we're in Cuba, is that we want to make sure we're helping the people there as much as we possibly can, whether it's working with them and getting to know them or supporting them in a financial setting. That's why we stay in host families and not hotels, and that's why it's nice to go to these paladares. Mediterraneo is a paladar, and it's really close by, and it's one of my favorites. They have pizzas and pastas, but it's all farm to table food, so it's really, really good. But I love the food in Cuba. It's one of my favorite things about it. I kind of eat all the time. it's different in the sense that you can't walk into like a little local convenience store and buy a bunch of things. So one of the things we always tell students is make sure you pack snacks and granola bars and things like that, because you'll have your meals, but there's not a lot of snacking things to do other than, going to a restaurant and ordering food. But there's not, like the little local corner convenience store that we would have here. You can't just walk in there and buy things. That's much more challenging to do in Cuba.
Great, thank you, Jason. That's really cool.
Yeah, there's a dish called muros y cristianos, and it's a bean and rice dish, and it's like black beans and rice, and it's I love it so much. It's super good. I'm getting hungry for Cuban food now. And there's also a lot of fruit. Of course, the fruits are a big part of the Cuban diet as well, like mangoes and things of that nature. So being a tropical climate, that's there. And then, of course, you can't talk about Cuban food without talking about Cuban coffee. Cuban coffee is like the most amazing thing ever if you drink coffee. It's a really, really strong espresso with a whole bunch of sugar in it. So it's not only a jolt of caffeine, but a jolt of sugar as well. But it's a staple of definitely a daily dose for me, or at least a few times a day.
Awesome. And do they have plantains as well?
They do have plantains. It's not, they're not as common as they are in like the Dominican Republic for sure, but plantains are definitely a part of the diet for sure.
Okay.
And the preparation is it's slightly different. Like just the way they prepare things is a little bit different. But it's so good. Like a breakfast, they'll typically have some type of an egg dish, like a toast, not so much a meat per se, but like toast and fruit and maybe an egg of some sort or something like that. The bread, there's usually good bread as well. That's always good. And it's all fresh. Like it's literally whatever they got at the market that particular day, or the different vegetables or fruits or whatever they had. That's what's so good about it, is that it's so fresh and it just tastes so good.
Nice. And can you talk a bit about a little bit more in depth, maybe about La Matanzas? And I'm just looking at some of the places that the program's going to be going.
Yeah, so I've actually not been to Matanzas. That's one of the places that I have not been, so I'm really excited about it. I will say that the students that we've had that have gone there before, so I wanted my colleague Emily to be on the call so she could talk about it. So unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us, but hopefully we can have a session with her too, because she can speak much more in depth about a lot of the actual specifics. But I will tell you that I know with the times that I've been there before, the things that we've done that are specifically focused on the Afro-Cuban side of it, it talks a lot about the influence of the African religions and just the heritage and the culture of the people that came from Africa to Cuba, and how it's been intermixed within the local culture as well. So it's a really cool opportunity. Like for example, one of the question and answer session with the Osha Ifa priests and practitioners. So that's like a really interesting part, because it's going to explore the Afro-Cuban religion and how that's kind of intermixed with Christianity. Cuba doesn't have an official religion, which is interesting because there's so many different religions on the island. A lot of people just assume that it's Catholicism or Christianity, but it's actually not. They don't even have an official religion because there's so many different things. So you can see all sorts of things happening at the same time. So it's a really cool mixture, and it's a really interesting study in how that can work specifically. But there's cultural projects that are happening related to those traditions specifically. So that particular location is a really great one for students to really kind of explore and learn about how those different activities are incorporated into everyday life within the Cuban people, and how it's that blending of those cultures. So the roots of the Afro-Cubans, but then also the local customs and cultures as well. So I wish I'd been there. I've always wanted to go, so I'm super excited because I've always heard really, really great things about it with the programs that have gone before. But unfortunately, that's one place that I actually haven't been. So I'm really excited for that particular one. Some of the other ones, though, I can for sure tell you about.
Great. Yes, please.
Yeah. So for example, so there's an optional visit to the Fábrica de Arte Cubano. So that's one of my favorite things to do because it's the most interesting place. The Fábrica de Arte is actually a cross between a club, a museum, a performance venue, a cultural center, and a cafe and a bar. Like, I don't even know how to describe it because it's the most interesting place ever. So it's optional because it's like a nighttime thing, so it's more of an evening thing. But I would really encourage, and I mean, obviously this is assuming that everything is okay with regard to COVID restrictions and what they're doing there specifically to that, but it's a really, really interesting location. I've seen a play there, I've seen a fashion show, I've seen art shows. I mean, I've seen everything happen in this location. And it's a really interesting spot. And it really is, I mean, it's a fun nightclub if you want it to be, but it's also just such a cool cultural center. And the Cuban Minister of Culture was actually there one night, and I actually sat and talked with him for a while. It was just really, really interesting and really, really cool. So that one's really, really fun. The Revolution Museum is a really cool program or a really cool museum where you actually get to learn about the history of the US-Cuban relations and just the whole history of the Cuban Revolution. And it gives you a different perspective. If you're familiar with Cuban history, you've learned one side of it, and this is kind of a different side of it. So that's kind of an interesting way to look into that. There is a visit and a volunteering at El Cachon. It's a permaculture project. So this one is something that Cuba has a really good history of being very green and doing all these initiatives to be sustainable, which is kind of interesting because a lot of the cars are really big polluters because they're from the 50s, from the US, like 1957 Chevys and things of that nature. But when you look at the actual green side of Cuba, there's a lot of work with environmental sustainability, organic farming, and those things. So this particular program is a permaculture project that works about sustainable principles and community education and outreach. So it's teaching the Cuban people how to live sustainable practices and to recycle and those kinds of things. So that's a really cool opportunity that we're going to get to do, and we volunteer. So the projects vary a little bit. It might be a community outreach education type program, or it might actually be working in an actual environmental project. So it kind of varies from term to term, but it's a really cool opportunity to do something really fun in that sense. The Guanabo is actually a beach, so it's an opportunity to spend time at the beach. And so what we're doing is kind of that's where our farewell lunch will be, and it's actually at a beach house of one of our host mothers, Aleda. She's kind of our resident mother for all of our Cuban families, but it's a really cool opportunity to go to the beach. Out in Havana specifically, the beaches are not amazingly great, so this is a little bit outside of the city, so this gives you a chance to get some beach time as well, which is there, but it's also a really nice view of what that part of Cuba is like, so it goes outside of the city just a little bit, so it's more of a fun thing, but it also gives you an opportunity to learn a little about it. But most of the programs are going to the visits are going to focus on the Afro-Cuban side and that particular culture and whatnot. So there's the Cuban history, like the Jose Marti Memorial and things of that nature, the Revolution Museum, and then also Old Havana. Old Havana is kind of where the historical center of the city is. So there's the castle or the fortress that was there. There's a lot of different monuments and plazas and things like that. So you get a tour and a history of that. So you get that side of it too. So it's just a really, really cool. There's so much to do. You're gonna love every moment of it, I promise.
That's fantastic, Jason. And I know we have looks like one student with us. Do you have any questions, Josie? You're welcome to put other questions in the chat box, or feel free to put your microphone on if you would like to ask any questions.
I don't think I have any questions right now. I think you answered everything, and it sounds really awesome. I did go to like a talk about this before, and I was really excited about it because we were going to do it one term.
Yeah.
But then it hit. And so I'm excited that it's still going on, and excited to see what happens.
Oh, good. I'm excited to participate. Honestly, I cannot speak highly enough about Cuba, and I'm just so excited for this program. And Emily, our resident director, she's so excited for it as well, because she's actually an American who's been living in Cuba for quite some time. She was actually she studied there and fell in love with the nation, and then she moved there. So she is actually an American living there, but she's been there for forever, and she's very into music as well. So from the Afro-Cuban music side of it in particular, she's super excited about it because that's one of her absolute favorite passions. So I know that she just really got excited when we were talking about this program, and really can't wait to help share the culture and that particular side of Cuban culture with all of you. So I'm really excited for you.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Good, awesome.
You can tell in her video that Emily was really excited, so that's pretty cool.
I hope you could hear it. Could you hear the video? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Great. Well, that just about concludes our session. And Josie, if you do end up having any other questions, you're welcome to pop over into the Ask an Advisor link that's in the Canvas platform, or you book a virtual session through the bookings link with me, or email studyabroad@uwstout.edu.
Okay, awesome.
I just put my email in there as well. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me as well. I'm happy to answer them about the questions about the program too. So, however,
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to present on the program.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help answer any questions. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Right, take care.